Hello guys, in today's video we are going to learn how to do unit testing. As you know, unit testing is a software testing technique that allows you to write, test for each unit or each component of your software application. So this technique helps you to make sure and ensure your system is working as intended. So in this tutorial, we will learn how to do unit testing, and we will take the example of the last tutorial where we talked about how to create a custom user model in Django. I'll leave the link to this video in the description below in case you missed that. But we will create this instead of doing manual testing like we did before. So it's better and much more better and recommended approach to use unit testing before just to make sure your program and your software or each unit of your software works as expected. So that will be our topic for today. So let's dive into this. So in order to write unit test, we will use a class or a built-in class that comes from Django called test case. So in order to do this, it's already provided by Django when you create your application. So you will see a file called test.py here, and you will see this line of code is already written for you. So all you need to do is to start using this class test case, and every class you make here to test something, you should inherit everything or every functionality that you need for testing your software from this class. Right, so let's call this class something like, since we are going to test, the custom user model that we created before, let's call this custom user test case. I don't want to specify this as a model, but let's keep it like that. And then let's inherit from test case. Great, so the first step in testing is to set up a testing environment. So this testing environment will play the role of fake test database, and this environment will be destroyed when the test ends. So it means every data here you set it up is not going to affect your current database. It will be destroyed once the test is finished. So let's set up this testing environment. And so we can do this by a method that provided by test case called setup. It takes in one argument, it's called self. And here let's set up our database. And so our database currently is just relying on our custom user model. So we want to provide some data. So as you know, we have two kind of users. We might have a regular user and a super user. Great. And we want to test if the custom user model and custom user manager are working as expected. So let's have two variables here, one to create a regular user and one to create a custom user, and we will use these variables to store this new data about those two users in our fake test database. So let's start with the regular user account. Now let's give the name to user to it, and then we can call again our model. If you remember, we call this custom user. So let's call this from since this one is already here, so let's just say from models import the name of this is called custom user, and so let's call this custom user here, and then we will use the same function we used before to test the model creation manually, which is called object. So it's a variable inside custom user model that calls the custom user manager to classify user accounts. So in this case we'll be using the create user because we want to set up first data for regular user account. So let's say object create user, let's set up our dependencies here. So I mean the arguments. So the first one would be username. So this will take let's say something like test user. Then we can give an email to this. Let's have it something like e.com, and then we can add password, and let's have a fake password, something like this. I think let's have a number, but don't take this part seriously because it doesn't matter for me here. So just a fake password. Okay, great. And let's do the same for the create. So let's just have here comment regular user or test user account, and here we can have one for super user. So super user test account. So it will take self as always, and let's call this variable super user. So we will call the same model, same class, object again, but instead of create user, we will call create super user that we already put as well in our manager. So here's super user. Also, it takes 3 arguments: username, email, and password. So username here, let's make it different. So let's say test super user. And then we have email, I will say maybe something like test super user. So let's use the same template, e.com, and let's have the same password. This is not important, but we can just make it here, and then we can add, or just, you know, change this number to 3. Great. So now we are setting up, you know, our testing environment and our fake test database. So let's run now our first unit test, and our first unit test will be simple. We want just to test the string representation of our model. To do so, let's have a function here called test string, or custom user first, string representation. I know it's a very long name, but it's okay for this tutorial. Right, that takes also 1 argument. So what we need to do, we want to make sure that this model returns the username of the instance. And in order to do this, we need to have, you know, an idea about what we will get here. So from our fake test database. So we will start first testing the the regular user account and then the super user account. So in order to make sure that the function returns exactly the username of the instance, we will do this by saying self assert. It's a method provided by test case again, and now here it takes 2 arguments. It takes the actual value and the expected value. So the actual value, since we want to test the regular user account, if it returns exactly the username that we expected, so we need to do this. So let's put self dot user. Yeah, we don't need to put username because this is enough, since this one, it represents the model. So we need to make sure if the result here equals test user. And then we can do the same for super user account, assert equal. So this method assert equal is going to compare 2 values, the expected value and the actual value. And then it will determine if the test is going to be successful or it will fail. Right? So let's just have super user here, and then we can just say I call this test super user. Nice. So let's run this test and make sure if it works. And then I will pretend, I will try to make it fail, and then we'll see how we can fix this and how we can read that error in order to fix this unit test. Right, so let's save the file and let me go to my terminal. So I already here did some kind of attempt, but anyway, so let's just run this. In order to run your test, you can just run python manage.py test, and also you can specify the application that you want to test. So we have users applications, so let's specify users applications. So we can just say python manage.py test user. So this will calculate the number of tests you have, and then it will give you a test. So you see here the test is filled. Why? Because it runs based on the model name here. So we need to convert the representation to a string format so that we can get exactly the expected output. So in order to fix this, let me go to here to the actual value and convert it to string, and let's do the same for the super user part. And now you can just have this. You see the test is the assertion error gives you an idea how to fix this, and this is so helpful. Instead of just giving you a traceback where the source bug occurred, but normally it gives you as well the assertion error. So let's run again this command. So I should expect okay, great. So it means the test runs successfully, and now it's going to destroy the test database. Amazing. So now we tested the string representation of the model. So let's have other tests or other unit tests to test something serious. And so maybe we can test something like maybe the model creation, or I don't know, maybe we can create or test something like the values here, but let's keep it very simple and test first the user or regular user account creation, and then we can test the super user account creation, and maybe we can add something more serious to test the username uniqueness and email uniqueness. Right, let's see if we can do this. So let's get into that by running another unit test here, and this one let's start with regular user account creation. So let's call this test can do regular user account creation. I know it's a very long name, but just to make it descriptive for you guys, I'm running this, okay? Let me just add some space here. Great, so the first thing we can test is to make sure if the model or if the user account is an instance of the custom user model. How we can do this? As I remember, there is a function called assert is instance. I think so. I hope that it works. I hope it's exactly what I think it should be. And then we can just run self.user, and then we can put the expected value, which is the custom user, because we want to make sure that this model here is an instance of this. But here this is different because this one is going to compare the value, but its instance is not a comparison method. Is a method to verify that that the actual value is an instance or is a part of the expected, or let's say the expected here is not expected, sorry, but is a part of the parent model, okay, which is custom user. So let's put here custom user, since that one is the custom or is the parent component of our model. So let's start with this first, and then we can continue running the other test. But let's just make sure this is going to be helpful now. Right, so let's have another assert, and normally we need to make sure that this regular user account is created. So this is going to be for the first assert. So the second one in the line 27, we will test if that regular user account is not a staff user, is not a super user account, to make sure it's just a regular user account, right? We don't want to test whether it's active, but we can do the same as well, and you will understand how to do that. Right, so here in this for this purpose, we will use assert equal because it will compare the values there. Right, so let me go to self user. I'm going to use the same instance, and normally this one it takes is staff as always, and that will be the actual value. Let's see, normally we are expecting to get false, and the same as well for self. Let's have assert equal and just put self user is super user, and then we are going to expect false as well. And after that, let's test as well the whether the user is active or not. Normally we are expecting to have, you know, user is active, and this will be true. Right, so let me test that, and let's keep the super user account next. Let's just go back to the terminal and just run the same command. So there are two unit tests here, and normally, great, that works as expected. So yeah, so let's do this next. So let's try to make this fail, just to understand what makes true use. So maybe we can do something, because we don't have any variable here, but normally if you try to put anything that you used before that doesn't depend on the parent class, which is custom user, it will fail. And if you put anything here called true, so that will fail as always. So you can see we have two tests, and then you will see this dot here, it will you see, so that's exactly the assertion error, and it means the actual value is false, but the expected one is true. But normally false doesn't equal true, because the actual value of this fake user model is false, and normally you should say false here, because that's the expected thing. But normally something, if that thing, sometimes it doesn't happen from the way you create this model, but it might happen from your logic, and that's why we write unit test. Okay, so let's put here false, and let's run another unit test for the custom user account creation. Normally I'm just going to do copy and paste because they will be the same. So we are just going to write functions that here's and change just the name here. So instead of saying regular user, we can just say super user, and here we can just say super user, here also super user, and here we can use super user as well as this part here. Maybe this one is not necessary because super user is already active. So here we are expecting to have true, and here also we are expecting to have true. Okay, so let's run this test and make sure it works as expected. And let's clear the terminal and run again. So we have now 3 tests. So, and you see this dots, and if we get okay, so which means everything runs successfully. Now let's test another serious thing, which is the uniqueness of the username and email fields. So we can just use one account here. Maybe we can use the, maybe this one is intended for the regular user account. So let's just choose the regular user account as a base for testing. And let's have another unit test for that. And let's call this test username uniqueness. Okay. Take self as always. So let me just put self here because I don't really care, and we will test later, the email as well. Great. So Normally we set before the username to be unique as well as email. So we want to test if this will work as expected. So here we want to make sure that the model will raise an error that said that this model is, or that username is already available, and you have to set up another username for your account. Right, so in order to do this, we need to make sure how to run an error. And in order to run this error, we need a class from Django called integrity error. And in order to get this, we need to import this from Django. So in order to import this, we need just to say from Django.db import integrity error. So let's put this first, and from Django.db import integrity. I hope it works like this. Nice. And then we can call this. So here we need to create another account, and this account should be, should include, already available username. So let's have with first, and then we can call this. So we can here use another function from test case, and this is called assert. Can you guess? That will be raises, and that will be the integrity error of of the function in general. Sorry, let me just close the window. I hope there's no noise out there. Okay, so sorry, some kids are playing there. So anyway, so here we want to use this function to make sure that a user with already created, already available username is going to raise an error. So let's call integrity error here, and then we can call our function, or our class, sorry, to create another user account with available username. So we will be using always custom user and object as always, and let's just use custom user method, and let's give again the same arguments. So here we have username. Yeah, so let's call this test user. So we already have this, right? And email would be let's have regular user here, e.com, because we want to test that individually. And then we can have let's keep the password similar, so we don't want to so, and just change this to sex here. Right, so I hope that will run successfully and see what can happen. Okay, and then we'll make it fail just to understand the error of this unit test. So let's save the file and go back to terminal. Let me put it here, clear the terminal, and run test. So now we have 4 tests. Oh, we are progressing. Second one, the third one, and the fourth one. Oh, right, that runs great. So let's make this not unique, right? So, and see what we will get. So if I run this again, I hope I can get an integrity error here. Nice, that's it. So you see, if you read this a little bit, integrity error not raised, which means the user is created successfully. But we want to test the uniqueness of this, and let's keep it as user, and that's exactly it. So I want to let you know about the kind of error you will get if your tests are failed, right? So let's do the same, but this time for email. And let's copy and paste this because they look very similar. And sorry, made another mistake again here. So I should call this here. Great. So instead of making the username unique, you will make username unique and email ready available. So we can just call this regular user, And this one, since we already have this, we will call this test user. And we should get, something like the first one, so an integrity error. And yeah, so everything worked great. So let me change the name here and say email uniqueness. Okay, and then we can save the file. Normally we should expect 5 tests, and let's test that. Great, so the first one is gone. Great. Amazing, so 5 tests are running successfully now. So nothing is failed, and let's make sure that is working great. Let's just have a name like this, and normally here we should expect an error that said no integrity error is raised. Always make sure that happens. So now we see that it's filled, right? And don't worry about the dots here, they don't really follow the order of yours. You can see here that our test that filled is in 5th order, I think. So that's why. Anyway, so you can see the same error has raised, and that means the test is created ready and it doesn't find any problem with this. But normally we want to make sure that email is unique, so we want to raise an integrity error for this. So let's keep things and let's run everything here just to make sure everything is running. And yeah. Great, so good. I hope you can find this tutorial helpful. So just let's do a little recap. The first step is to import test case, set up your testing environment, writing some data for testing, and then you can add your unit test. So we use in this tutorial assert call, assert is instance, and assert raises. That, this method is used for to raise integration errors. There are a lot of them. You can find this in the Django documentation if you want to look for more methods you can use in your unit test. But this provides a basic, testing for our custom user model, and I think that's what we need, because what's important for us is whether the custom user model is created, properly, and it classifies users as regular user accounts and super user accounts, and also it makes sure if the user has a unique email and unique username. So feel free, guys, to expand this unit test and take it too seriously, like a real world project. But for now, for testing purpose, you need just to have this, and I hope this can give you a basic idea of how to run unit testing in Django using test case class. And yeah, that's all for this, and see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.
Asteroid.